So today I have with me Lisa Otero, indication there of a close relative, and she is going to talk about her work at an alternative school in Portland, Oregon, where she's been for 7 years. And I'm always proud, as we talk to each other pretty frequently, about how she puts the relationship first in all her interactions with young people and staff and their families. So Lisa, so good to have you in the first of our new series of interviews, and maybe start with a little bit about your own background and the school, and then share a bit of your way of working. Stories are always great.
You bet. Hi, it's nice to be here. I'm excited to be the first in this series of interviews. I am currently the principal of the Many Nations Academy in Portland, Oregon. We're a very small private alternative school that works with the Portland Public School District. But Many Nations Academy is inside a bigger agency called the Native American Youth and Family Center. So we're an Indigenous American Indian focused school and agency that helps serve the urban Native population of Portland, Oregon and the surrounding metro areas. And so we work with students who have become disenchanted and have been basically pushed out of the public education system. And our goal is to help them find a home, a community, a family where they know that who they are is important and that their dreams can be realized and manifest, because the system has failed them, basically, and the system isn't really good right now about addressing the failure of the system. I think the real damage that is always being done is that the student and the families are being blamed, instead of taking that mirror and turning it back on the system and really finding better ways to relate and connect with one another, because learning is all about connection and relationship and relating to each other and the material. So that's what we do, and we do that in the context of what's called the relational worldview model, which is an indigenous paradigm of seeing the world and how that works. And so I'm very happy. I love going to work. This will become my 8th year of leading my small team of teachers and the just beautiful, magnificent students who kind of really teach me every day, which is why I continue the work.
So that's a great introduction. Number of students?
You know, that varies, because as an alternative school, we're dealing with youth who oftentimes don't have stable households or can be houseless. Families have to move. Some students have to work often, so school isn't always a priority, which we understand, which I think is also a new thing for a lot of young people. They're not used to adults and systems understanding their current situation. So that always varies. Our contract with the Portland Public School System means we can have up to 60 students at a time. I think it's a wonderful small setting that works, because in order to put relationships first, right, and to do relational leadership for all of us, because we're all in the game together,
Yeah, that's good.
is small sizes, like small school sizes. I worked at a charter school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which had a total population of 360, 7 through 12. And so one of the keys for me is communities can't be too big, because then you can't put relationships first.
Mm-hmm. But you always, I remember in your history, have had pretty good success, even in stressful situations, which I'm sure you face. I'm sure many of the students you have are not like jumping to be back at school, having been pushed out or had a bad experience. And I've always enjoyed your stories about how you help turn their, I wouldn't call it lack of motivation, but their anxiety about whether this is good for them and really going to reinforce who they are. And you turned that around in just greeting them and how they come to school, and when an issue comes up, you got any quick examples of
Well,
how you then focus on that relationship so they feel seen, heard, and valued, and that they're the point? I remember hearing you all the time say, I'm trying to make sure they know they're the point of the interaction.
well, I think that's key because you know, my students basically have been traumatized and harmed by the system. You know, so our mantra is do no harm, basically. And then what I learned from you and through all of the offerings and teachings that you provide is activating wellness with youth. And so, and like you said, you know, one of the things I've learned is because attendance has a tendency to be an issue for our youth for a variety of reasons. You know, I don't want to go into too many details about that, but, you know, students are so used to being accused of doing something wrong. Where have you been? Why haven't you been here?
Yeah.
You know, why can't you put school first instead of just the really like invitation? You know, we create an environment that's inviting. Why don't come hang out with us, learn with us. So we try and remove this hierarchical thing. We work in this circular paradigm. And so like what we do on a regular basis is when a young person walks in the door, even if we haven't seen them in a week, it's, hi, it's just so great to see you. Have a great day. How are you? For a lot of our students, because they don't trust adults in their lives, right, for a variety of reasons, and again, traumatized at many different levels and in many different areas of their life. It's, do you need a snack, right? And I think really another big thing is not focusing on academic outcomes, which I know might sound counterintuitive to being in a school, but when you put relationships first, the academic outcomes come naturally. When then someone feels like they're part of something meaningful that they're seeing, one of the things that I do is I've learned that it's important to take the time. So like with high stakes outcome, you can't take the time to relate. So it takes the time to say, what's going on?
So that's what I was saying. So they know they have the time when it comes to you, that they don't have to comply or do it a certain way in order to get your attention or affection or interest, because they are still struggling. You've mentioned, and you get the outcomes over time, because time is not the key, right? Time is what gives you the opportunity to connect.
Well, yeah, and an indigenous and a native worldview, by the way, we're not working on linear time at all, right? Which is a Western paradigm, which is you start here, you're going to end up here, right? And that's actually the educational model in the United States, for sure, because I'm hoping we have some visitors from around the world here watching the video. But so what it means is someone can, a young person I have found in my 7 years there can respond in a matter of days. But quite a few of our students, it takes time, and you have to be willing to invest that, because it could show up a year later, a year and a half later.
Things you raise, so many themes we're all approaching that everyone listening I know deal with. I'm always interested in talking to you about that transformative moment, though, and I know it can come over time. What to you are those signposts that it's now about them and about their life, and they get to, success is not determined externally, it's determined by who they are and how they go. You've told me so many stories, like the one of some of your graduates who come back and all of a sudden say, I never thought I'd be here, and I'm here because I chose to be here.
Right. You know, it's most recently a graduate, not this past June, but the June before, who lived through COVID. I mean, quite honestly, the resilience of my students is what I learn every day, is how to be resilient, right? And how to show up, because they show up. So it's my job to figure out how to show up best for them.
Oh, now that
they're
to me
showing
is
up.
the formula.
Right.
They show up, and they always show up in some way. Your job is to show up for them.
Right. And so, I mean, just this young woman who came to us, you know, if you want to look at outcomes, highly academically talented, right? Got into a 4-year university, but like for me, that's secondary. For me, it was the speech that she gave at the end, because our students are given the opportunity to speak to their experience at the end of their time with us, was it just, made me want to continue the work. She just stood up there and said to the audience and looked at the teachers, right, and said, thank you for making me love learning again. Wow. We don't, why then do anything else, right? It's not about the standardized test score. It's not about getting into the 4-year university.
Yeah.
When you can grow that in somebody, you know that she will be always successful. But one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
If you want to know about how relationships, I think, can really change a youth and just, I think, really put them on a whole different path for the rest of their lives, which means their families will change, their communities will change.
Absolutely.
Right? Is we had this young woman who came to us who was houseless when they enrolled in school, living in a van with their 5 other siblings. And mom is incarcerated quite often. Right, so if you were to look at the ACEs score and look at someone who has dealt with such severe trauma in their lives, and so naturally as a result was quite explosive, right? And so the way they exhibited their frustration of their circumstance in their lives was exploding. So we got a lot of door slamming and books being thrown on the ground when there was a frustration, when there was whatever it was causing that. Name calling, which is something like most administrators and adults won't tolerate. We tolerate it in this way, right? So it's the statement of, well, one, because you can't take it personally. You can't be in community though, because we don't speak to you like that. We ask that you not speak to us like that, and it's not part of our values. But you have to take the time to do that. And then it's also then showing them that they're not just going to then say, but you're out, right? That's the system. You're expelled, you're suspended, I'm calling your parents, you're out. But that takes time, because that's the go-to, right? When they're frustrated, is that explosion. And so I'll tell you what, explosion after explosion, and it took a couple years. There was no trust in adults, right? No trust in the system. And when we would take the time and give them the space, like we have a room set aside for students who can just sit and kind of like rebalance themselves in a way.
That's a good term, yeah.
And finally there was this time where it was an explosion had happened, and it hadn't happened in a while. And and this young person had gotten really good about knowing that they could come and explode, quite honestly. And what a gift, number one.
There's the key.
Right? A place where it was okay, though.
It was okay to not be okay.
You're not traumatizing anyone else. The teachers and the other students can continue on with what they need to do, but they can... And then it was this... I didn't do it like intentionally, but that's the power of dialogue and relationship. Is I just said, what's wrong, what's going on, like what's going on, what's happening, and tears, always tears when the explosion happened. And finally they said, I get so mad when I get so mad. I can tell you right there, I knew that something had changed.
Yeah, no, that's...
Because when someone can be self-reflective like that, the world's your oyster then at that point, as a human, right?
And it probably showed in her, because now she knew...
Well, there's the ability and the sense of safety and security,
and the sense of safety
to say that.
So that comes through just every conversation, every day, every opportunity. It's an ongoing... what we call in our work, it's an ongoing kind of dance, exchange, serve, volley. But they know they're as important in the relationship as you are.
Oh, of course.
And that's been, watching you over the years, transformative. You get huge numbers of kids who could not ever stay in a public school setting who are now operating with positive futures and lots of opportunity, and end up loving themselves and you all as a result.
I would think so. And And that's why we do the work we do. That's why that school exists, is because I'm working with a population of young people who will not succeed in the system, because the system is built to defeat them, actually. And so why we're always trying to do it differently. You know, and that's maybe a whole nother video we can talk about. It's
another interview, because
Yeah.
it's critical to say, because I often say, and our friends we've talked about doing one with you, is alternative schools are tough context. And I'm going, no, alternative schools are full of real kids. And if you're not dealing with real kids, the system you have is not an educational system.
And you have to be, you actually have to be willing and brave enough and courageous enough, and like my favorite thing right now is that means you're vulnerable enough to say, I'm an educator, but the education system is hurting people. It's actually hurting the adults as well as the kids and the families.
And we're seeing that.
And so we have to be willing to kind of chip away at what we know is harmful.
Yeah.
And the way to do that, the way to twist that, the way to build upon that, and then to build that together, because what works for my community is not going to be the same that might work for someone else's community, because you have to do that together.
Right.
Right. You have to build that work together.
And I love you, as we end on the interview, that it's relationally, it's a building. It's a commitment to each other. It's moving through, who are we here? What do we value? What do we understand? What do you understand? And that leads in our approach to this idea of both of you now co-creating your life and experience together.
Right. Of course.
Well,
yeah.
What a way to start.
You bet. Well,
we now have
Mika in the video too. So thanks, Dad. You know, the work you do, I admire what you do, and I know so many people have learned and grown and now can serve themselves and the youth differently. And so I hope everyone will take advantage of everything that the Center for Relational Learning and Relational Leadership can offer them in changing and motivating them to continue working with young people.
Well, I really appreciate that at so many levels. And our work is becoming clear. It's to support those of you who build and put the relationship first. So a great start. I'm sure if people are interested, they can email us and have more contact with you, and we'll put your references on our website, because it's all about people learning with and from each other.
You bet.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.